How you doing, YouTube? Matt Massive Beer Reviews, back with a little bit of Homebrew Wednesday up in this piece in the form of Homebrew for everyone. That'd be my boy Carson. It says massive, that's right, massive stout version number 3. Now, he sent me, originally, he called it the Big Core 4 Stout. When was this around? I have the review up here. I just wanted to actually see if I could find a date on this sucker. When did you send this one off, brother? Okay, it is November 18th, 2020. So he called it a Big Core 4 Stout. I said, why did you not call it just a Massive Stout? Because that's what was in his brewing notes that he shared with me. And he auto-corrected, so I appreciate it. Yeah. Anyway, I love that beer. I really, really love that beer because I didn't know this, but I got very much Worldwide Stout vibes off of that beer. And he's like, dude, it's exactly what I was shooting for. And I'm kind of curious to see where this one lands. This is 129.21 as far as bottling. That's almost exactly 2 months to the day. So we'll see how this sucker lands. So purposely didn't watch that previous review, so I couldn't influence myself. Like I said, Worldwide Stout vibes. I remember that portion of the show, but we'll go into it and just try to speak to it as its own entity, as opposed to trying to compare it to that other one. But I'm sure the word Worldwide Stout will pop out of my mouth at some point or another, as it has already several times. Label-wise, awesome. Masking tape. Ink marker. It's called a Sharpie. Yeah, as far as the beer goes, that looks like a big old stout. Big, rich, dark, just outside of that motor oil kind of territory. But got that nice, what I like my coffee to look like, colored head. Yeah, off to a good start. Give him nose. Boozy maltiness. That's what I'm getting on here. Almost to the point where it's like you kind of want to think spirits involved. There's no wood kind of barrel aging on the nose that you get, but since it is a bit boozy on the nose, you want to think spirit, but it's not there, and you're not getting like a big red fruit component. And then chocolate malt, not nearly as aggressive as I would hope for at 12%, but you're getting this nice kind of baker's chocolate, semi-sweet, just a dollop of milk chocolate in there. It's more of a darker, roastier kind of chocolate to it. That's pretty much it. There's really not much else to it. I'd expect to have a bolder nose outside of the heat, or that booziness, I should say, because it's not overly hot. It's just a little bit boozy. I expect to have a little bit more of a punch to it as far as malt and as far as sweetness and all those kind of things, but it smells quite nice. Let's dive in. Cheers. Okay. That's a way more bittering beer. I said I wasn't going to compare it to the other one. It's bitter. Not in a negative way, but just, I mean, it's so hard not to try to roll back to the memories of that previous beer. I just remember it not being this bitter. And the bittering comes off very much like coffee-like bittering. It's not coffee. But it has a very coffee-like kind of presence to it. Kind of like it has coffee in it. But I'm not. It can't be coffee unless it's dosed very lightly with the big robust coffee to where it's just accentuating and propping up the malt roastiness, the malt bitterness. This comes off big and roasty. It comes off not overly sweet. There's a sweet kind of syrupy component to it, but since it's so roasty and so bittering from that roasted portion of the show, like there's a bittering component to it that is pretty hefty, but I believe almost all of it's coming from a roasted malt component as opposed to a hop side of things, so that leads me into the coffee. But it also is, when you have that roastiness come from the malt and that bittering comes from the malt as opposed to a hop, when you have the sweetness in here, it kind of it tempers that sweetness quite a bit more easily than just a hop bitterness. Way more Russian Imperial Stout vibes I'm getting, and I know that's more of a hop thing. So when I talk about the other one, which I said it wasn't, but now I'm going to do it because I don't give a fuck. The other one had what was a big, bold, sweeter, a little bit stickier, a little bit sweeter kind of beer. This one is very much more kind of Russian Imperial Stout, like bittering kind of beer. It's not a Russian Imperial Stout. That bittering, like I said, is coming from roasted malt, so that kind of separates itself from the Russian Imperial Stout, because the Russian Imperial Stout is going to use the bittering from the actual roasted malts, but in conjunction with a big hop dose. I don't believe the hops are all that heavy in here. And then you're also dealing with usually a kind of a cherry, like red fruit component, or a darker fruit component that typically accompanies like a Russian Imperial Stout. You're not really getting that here, so it's more of an American bold Imperial Stout with Russian Imperial Stout kind of vibes to it. I really do enjoy the perceptual sweetness level on this. It's a sweet beer, but I like this. This is how I like my bigger, bolder stouts to come off, as far as the perceptual sweetness of it. And the reason why I'm saying perceptual is because it is sweet, but since you get so much roastiness and so much bittering from the roast, it tempers that sweetness, and I like that. I want that roast, that bittering from the roasted malt, to be smaller. But if you do that, the beer's going to get sweeter, so I want it to kind of go in tandem. I want that roastiness to be a little bit smaller, but I want that sweetness to follow, so it doesn't get sweeter. So it's almost like you dial back the roastier malt portion of the show here, but you also have to bring the beer back as far as sweetness, or have it finish a little bit better or something like that. That's where I would personally like this beer to go. And I like this. It's fun. It's still going to be one of the better homebrew stouts I've had, period. You know what I mean? But again, not that I wanted to compare to the other one. The other one, it was really, really just hit me right where I want my beers to be. And I loved it. And this is tasty, but I like the version. I don't know if that was version 1 or 2 that he sent me, but I do dig that one quite a bit more. But this is not a bad beer. It's just, it's a little bit more kind of not as cohesive as the other one, in the sense of how big the bittering from the roasted malt side of things is, in combination with that sweetness being, bigger than it should be. But if you dial everything back, the roast back, with the sweetness coming back a little bit, but keep the beer, everything else going, as far as the flavoring, as far as the chocolate, as far as the mouthfeel, all that stuff, I think it ends up being a little bit closer to the other beer, to be perfectly honest with you. So yeah, I like it. I think it's fun, dude. But I like the version better. That's my not so professional notes. This is what you get when I do beer reviews after baby time. It's been hard doing beer reviews after having a child. My son will be he'll be 2 weeks old in a day and a half. And it's been interesting. Like, I haven't done a ton of beer reviews. Finding personal time during pregnancy or post-pregnancy is, I think, not just hard, but a little bit selfish. But I also think it's needed. I try to go out of my way to force my wife to find time for herself, and things like that. And that's come for me through beer reviews. I'd be like, okay, I'm going to take an hour. I'm going to go do like 2 beer reviews and just sit and relax for an hour. And that's my time. But I've only done it about 4 times, I believe, in the past 2 weeks. And I don't think I'm doing that well with beer reviews. I just think it's a combination of being tired and overwhelmed, but ecstatically happy and all that kind of stuff. So I apologize for the beer reviews during this time. I know it's a weird way to kind of mash this into a homebrew review, but I think I'm not basically on my game as well as I am typically. And it is what it is. But I don't think my tastes have de-evolved or aren't on point. I just think, the snappiness and the wittiness that I assume I bring is a little bit slower. People probably like these better, honestly, because I'm probably not talking as fast. And I just feel like, I don't know, a little bit more sharp, a little bit more witty than I have been. So, anyway. Did I just massive beer review my massive beer reviews? Is this Inception? Are we incepting ourselves right now in a beer review? I don't know. So yeah, dude. Totally going to compare it to the other one. Like I said, I wouldn't do. I like the other one better. It's not a bad beer by any stretch. Still a tasty stout. Completely different beer. And as far as I'm concerned, way more roasty and toasty. And I think this is while a step forward. For me, it's a little bit of a step back as far as just visceral pleasure. You know what this beer actually tastes like for me, and maybe this will make a little bit more sense for you, Carson, specifically. It makes sense to other people. So I really enjoyed the other one a lot. I can see the similarities between this one and that one. This tastes exactly like that other beer if I tweak that other beer to put that other beer in 2 barrels, spirit barrels. So by that I mean, like, you know, more often than not, most breweries aren't just going to take the same exact recipe and rack it into a spirit barrel. They're going to brew a beer meant for a barrel. At least they should. And just tweak some things. And with the way the roast kind of comes off in this beer, and the way the bittering rides, the way the roast kind of comes off in this beer, I think you'd throw this in a decently wet spirit barrel, let it ride for a year. I think that sweetness that I wanted, well, it's big in here, it's perceptually smaller. I think that spirit makes up that difference, and it ends up being the barrel-aged version of that other beer, but tasting like that other beer is barrel-aged, even though you want to tweak them a little bit. It makes sense to, if you're a brewer, what I'm talking about. And that's where I think this beer would be awesome. To do this recipe as the barrel-aged version of the other one, and then throw this into a barrel, let it sit for a year, and then it'd be a really great base for a barrel-aged stout. So there you go. Homebrew in the books. Not my best work. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the review. Ever feel like sending off homebrew, I will not be as tired as I am now. You're more than welcome, Matt at massivebeers.com or massivebeers@gmail.com. And hopefully you guys enjoyed the review. Hopefully you're enjoying a little bit of homebrew right now. Hope to see you next time. Cheers.